Thank you very much for coming to the Spanish Pavilion. Today, we have the day of energy and mobility. We just had a panel that was very inspirational on art and sustainability. And now, so we are very, very inspired to really deal with energy issues. After this panel, we will have also other sessions dealing with this issue. But for me, it's a real pleasure to begin talking about energy efficiency. I would like to thank Benoit, and I would like to thank Mauricio on Climate Strategies and Partners, and I would like to thank Peter Sweetman, who really has supported us in the organization of this panel. Unfortunately, he's not here today physically, but we have him in our hearts. So thank you very much. I will give the floor to you, Benoit, to introduce the panelists and to begin with the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alicia. Can you hear me? This is on? You can hear me? Okay, in the back? Good. Good morning. Buenos dias. And welcome to this session, Aligning Energy Efficiency with the Paris Agreement. What a great title. My name is Benoit Lebeau. I work in Paris for an organization called the International Partnership for Energy Efficiency Cooperation. The name of the organization describes what we do. It's a collaboration on energy efficiency. And the members are the G20. We report to the G20. And before I present to you the rest of the panel, I'd like to show you a slide or two to make sure that we understand what energy efficiency is about and why we need to seriously scale up investment in energy efficiency. You can see here a building that was built 3 years ago in the Alps in France. This is a 3-story building with half of the roof made of PV. And in this building works 20 engineers. They are the best in France. I consider them as best in terms of building design. And they have built the building of their dreams. And this building, with half of the PV on the roof, consumes 7 times less electricity than it produces. This building is built with the state-of-the-art in terms of material, design. Every bit of the system is made energy efficient, and there is also the right behavior of the tenants. As a whole, this building consumes 7 times less electricity than it produces. This building made with local material to reduce the carbon footprint, because it was designed above all with intelligence, has a cost of less than 1,200 euros per square meter. Try to find in the world a new building that comfortable being built at less than 1,200 euros per square meter. And not only this building has no space heating system, no air conditioning system, just natural ventilation and good design. We have here an illustration of this world with the 4 blocks of what we call climate change mitigation. Renewable energy, that's a visible part. Energy efficiency, that's a less visible part. Material efficiency, even more hidden, but so much necessary for the decarbonization. And the last part is behavior change. Next slide. You certainly have heard Bertrand Piccard from Solar Impulse, and you must have seen his plane. It's exactly the same story. This plane, a solar plane, was able to travel the world with the sun as the only fuel. You remember that story? 40,000 kilometers around the globe as the sun as the only fuel. And this is also a summary of the 4 steps of the decarbonization of this world. Renewable energy, that's a visible part. Energy efficiency of every single piece of this plane, not only the engine, the management of the battery, every detail. Material efficiency, of course. and the right behavior of the pilots. A plane like that only flies very slowly, 140 kilometers. To double the speed, it would have taken 8 times more surface of panel. But I'm showing that plane because Bertrand Piccard himself tells the following story. To design the solar part, 2 engineers doing half a day. 2 engineers doing half a day. But for the rest of the plane, for the material efficiency, for the design of energy efficiency, 20 engineers doing 12 years. This is a summary of our world we are facing. We can decarbonize every energy system. We've been able to do that on a plane, on a building. We need to do that everywhere, in every system. The visible part is renewable energy, and we need them. But to really take us to where we need to go, it is the invisible part. It is the energy efficiency of every part, every subsystem. You with me? And when we look at this, you understand that the challenge was not to invest in the energy, in renewable energy, or in the part, to invest in engineering, and in fact in the solar panel. The investment was more important in all the design, material, and energy efficiency. And this is where we need to understand what the IEA is telling us, what the IPCC is telling us. We can decarbonize the world if, indeed, we combine renewable energy, energy efficiency, material efficiency, and behavior change and lifestyle change. When we look at the numbers, between now and 2050, 2040, according to some projection, we need to double the investment in renewable energy in the world. We need to double investment in renewable energy. But we need to multiply by 5 to 8 investments in energy efficiency. And this is where we are lagging. This is where there is a big gap. There is no shortage of investment in renewable energy. There is a shortage in investment in energy efficiency to really bring us all on this low carbon path. I represent an organization that reports to the G20. The way we work is we organize some collaboration on some specific topics. So we have one task group on buildings, we have one task group on transport, we have one task group on data, on energy management in industry. But the most interesting of all the task group over the past 5 years has been the task group on finance, the G20 Energy Efficiency Finance Task Group. This task group has offered to duplicate at the level of the G20 a collaboration, a dialogue that was first organized at the European level through another task group at the European level called the Energy Efficiency Finance and Investment Group. EFIG, Energy Efficiency Finance Investment Group. And when the energy efficiency community, the people like me and certainly some of us here, we know that we are the future. We know that we represent 40% of the decarbonization of the world. But the problem that we are not properly understood and we are not able to attract the finance, the investment that we need at the level of the decarbonization. And what was missing until now, it's a dialogue between this energy efficiency community and the finance community, the finance and investors. At best, when they understand climate change, those finance and investors, at best, when they understand climate change, they will invest in renewable energy. Do they invest in energy efficiency? Not at all at the level of what we need. And this is why, over the past 5 years, this G20 Energy Efficiency Finance Task Group has organized a series of conversations with the banks, with the insurers, with the investors. And progressively, this task group has brought to the table of the G20, to the energy ministers, a series first of principles, the G20 principle to scale up investment in energy efficiency. 2 years ago, this task group produced a toolkit available online. This here in June, during the G20 hosted by Japan this year, this task group produced the Tokyo Declaration to scale up investment. And behind this Tokyo Declaration, this toolkit, this principle, this task group has engaged a conversation with 140 different banks. I forgot the name of investors, but they weight 4 trillion worth of investment. This is just a start. So anyway, we now display the video of the task group lead, Peter Sweetman, who is unfortunately not able to be with us today. But this video will summarize what we have done so far for this task group.
This task group, which I lead. As 15 countries, we share best practice and promote policies which increase energy efficiency investments. Our G20 Energy Efficiency Investment Toolkit levers engagement with 144 public and private sector banks and investors managing over $4 trillion. Having arranged or contributed to 125 events, this year we worked with partners to launch the Tokyo Declaration on the energy performance of financial assets at a G20 ministerial side event. Energy efficiency investments are crucial to our energy transition. Come see our work.
Thank you, Peter, if you see us. Thank you for your message, and you've been well heard. What a better title than Aligning Energy Efficiency with the Paris Agreement. And we have this morning 4 panelists with a different background on this very topic of how to scale up investment in energy efficiency. And I will now turn to each of you for maybe a 5-minute short introduction to give us your own flavor, your own ideas on this important challenge that we have to align energy efficiency with the Paris Agreement. Bella Tonko-Nogid, you come from the CPI,
Climate Policy Initiative.
The Climate Policy Initiative, and you have a long history also of thinking and elaboration, part of the Climate Lab on energy efficiency. How do you see things today?
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. So I think I look at this issue in 2 ways, or two things I want to kind of touch on today. One is bottom-up financial innovation, addressing some of your points about how do we address the barriers to energy efficiency investment. And I think a lot of those are financial in nature, and so can be solved with innovative finance. And second, I want to talk very briefly about alignment of financial institutions, getting back to the title of this, of aligning energy efficiency, but how do financial institutions themselves align their operations in order to promote energy efficiency. So just in terms of bottom-up financial innovation, so we run an incubator called the Global Innovation Lab for Climate Finance. We've been around for 5 years, and we're an incubator that works to develop financial innovations. We've worked now with 41 entrepreneurs and institutions on behalf of our membership, which is public and private financial institutions. And those innovations have gone on to mobilize about $2 billion of investment in just 5 years. And so in terms of energy efficiency, we've worked with a couple of innovative finance instruments, and let me just kind of briefly tell you about 2 of those. One is called Energy Savings Insurance. This one was brought to us by the Inter-American Development Bank, and we helped them to develop this further for Latin America. And what this does is it ensures the projected value of energy savings. So it is reducing the risk of investing in energy efficiency measures. And the Inter-American Development Bank has gone on and launched this product together with packages of standardized contracts, with technical support, with energy efficiency credit lines in 9 countries in Latin America. And actually this product has been so successful, already mobilizing several $100 million of investment, that it's now being replicated in 3 countries in Europe, including Spain, and is undergoing feasibility studies in many other countries. So this is just an example of how, you know, a small idea, a simple insurance product can actually help catalyze a much broader market. Second one I want to talk about is called cooling as a service. This is something we helped launch just a couple months ago. It was brought to us by the Basel Agency for Sustainable Energy, BASE. And this one is addressing an issue that cooling is projected to increase 3 times the amount of cooling globally by 2050, I believe. And it's just a huge growth in cooling, and what we need are highly efficient cooling equipment in every building in the world. And the upfront costs are higher than for, you know, standard technology. And so what this does is, instead of a customer paying upfront for the technology, the customer actually pays per unit of cooling that they receive. So it also incentivizes the customer to be more efficient. And so now BASE, this agency, is actually working to pilot this in 5 countries, and they've launched an alliance to get everybody who wants to do this. They're standardizing the contracts. They're trying to make it as easy as possible for anybody to take up this idea. There's nothing proprietary about it. They want it applied globally as quickly as possible. So that's just bottom-up financial innovation. Just to touch quickly on this point about, once you have that innovation, how do you actually get it scaled up, get every financial institution actually implementing and promoting energy efficiency. And so this concept of alignment of financial flows with the Paris Agreement is extremely important, and it's something that more and more financial institutions are committing to doing. So we've worked this year on a study about how they actually implement it, and looking at what are the operational processes within financial institutions, what are the metrics that they should be looking at, how do they incentivize their staff to actually go out and look for energy efficiency and other climate investment opportunities, and then work with their clients to actually develop those. And it's quite an intensive process, and I think a lot of financial institutions are at the very beginning of that, but we're hoping, and we're seeing more and more, that they're implementing this. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and we see that we need to explore more. We need to put in place some more specific capacity to better address energy efficiency. And yes, we cannot expect the financial institution to tackle something very complex called energy efficiency. So great that you are exploring, and we certainly will follow with great interest this BASE and cooling as a service. This can open the door for definitely more investment in energy efficiency. Well, thank you. Chris Hirth, you are General Director of one of the Director General at the European Investment Bank. And you all have heard that the European Investment Bank made some very important decisions lately. Diversion from investment in fossil fuel, and full focus of the bank to support the energy transition and climate investments. And can you tell us more about the latest development, and also what you've been doing until now, and where energy efficiency also is likely to be better supported in the past than until now?
Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. As Benoit said, the EIB is moving towards being the climate bank. That is our goal. I mean, in fact, climate has always been an important objective, and in the last decade we've been lending between a quarter and a third of our business to support climate action projects. But now we have the ambition to increase that to 50% by 2025. And over the coming decade, we expect that would support a total of $1 trillion investment in climate action projects. But equally importantly, as Benoit's mentioned, that we want to apply the principle of do no harm across the whole of our activity. So half of our activity will be for climate, but for the other half, we would want to have the principle of do no harm. And in that context, we have recently decided that we would no longer support unabated fossil fuel projects, which was a fairly important decision, not an easy one, and we're the first MDB to do that. So hopefully other people will follow that lead. Within our energy lending policy, of which this decision about fossil fuels was one, we have also put energy efficiency at the heart of our energy strategy. That's, I think, logical for many reasons. One, of course, is the fact that if we don't have investments in energy efficiency, we will not be able to meet the Paris targets, because we simply have to improve the energy intensity of the economy in a constant and steady way over the next few decades. Large sums of money is needed, and Benoit also mentioned that we have to have multiples of, not quite an order of magnitude increase, but several multiples of increase in our current spending on energy efficiency. So that also makes sense for an institution like the EIB to try to help that process. But I think the interesting question is why do we waste energy? I mean, why do we spend money on energy and pollute the planet at the same time? It's a rather interesting question. And one of the key reasons is that we continue to support and subsidize fossil fuels heavily. In 2017, the IMF estimates were for more than $5 trillion of subsidies to fossil fuels, of which 85% were for oil and coal, so the worst possible fossil fuels. So not only are we're actually being bribed to pollute the planet, and perversely it's our own money, because of course the subsidies come from taxpayers, so the tax we pay is being used to bribe us to pollute the planet. So the question really is one of moving away from subsidies to actually pricing pollution, and so that actually businesses can then take decisions based on the environmental costs that they have on the environment. And in that way, we can expect larger businesses would respond to such price incentives and do the necessary investments in energy efficiency on their own account. However, the building sector poses a particular difficulty. We also heard from Bella how cooling is on the increase, and in fact, so the energy demand, as incomes rise, energy demand is likely to increase in the household sector. And the one focus, I believe, from the IEA was that by 2050, 20% of electricity consumption would actually be for air conditioning. So we have an increase in demand for energy as incomes go up. At the same time, our building stock is here for a long time. By 2050, the buildings that are here today, between 3/4 and 90% of them will still be there in 2050. So we have to do a lot of work to renovate our existing building stock, but unfortunately, at least in the EU, no more than 1% of the building stock per year is renovated. So we're not doing renovation at anything like the speed we need to do to reduce energy consumption, improve energy efficiency. Now, there are well-known barriers for that. The fact that there's people don't have necessary information. Aside from the fact that there's subsidized energy, they don't have the information about what they should do, and then there's split incentives between owners and tenants, which is well known, which also means that we need to have policy intervention to deal with those details. And it's also critical, as Benoit mentioned, that we have proper standards for buildings. We are, with the increase of urbanization, with world urban population now is about 50% of the world, will increase to 2/3 by 2050. And so to deal with that, we are building of the order of 6 billion square meters of new building every year, which, to put that into context, is more or less in a little bit over a month adding New York to the world's building stock. And in fact, Benoit told me just before the meeting that of new build, 2/3 are built with no standard of any kind at all. So there's really an issue here about having better global planning standards for buildings, and also global planning that goes beyond actually the building itself, but also land use and water use, which is also an important part of adaptation towards climate change at the urban level. In Latin America, because we have a theme on Latin America, I mean, population growth is slowing. It should peak by 2060, and the urban population is also slowing. But we do have a particular issue of intra-regional migration, large numbers of people moving from one country to another, which is putting huge pressure on housing stock. And here we have the risk exactly that housing stock will be built in emergency conditions with no standards at all and leave us locked into a problem for years to come. So my concluding comment is we need to have policy intervention. We need to have support at the municipal level for planning. And just think what we could do with if we use the $5 trillion that we subsidize fossil fuels with instead for supporting energy efficiency investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. And we'll certainly follow with great attention because hopefully you will pioneer this new era that we're entering with no longer investment in fossil fuel, but how to address this decarbonization of the infrastructure, the building, the cities, and all this. Not easy. Great to follow. Thank you so much, man. Talking about buildings, Christina Gamboa, you are the CEO of the World Green Building Council. And I just heard you in a previous session, and I think the transition to you is obvious now. So what are you offering from the building side, from your organization, to this finance debate that we are having?
Thank you very much, Benoit. Thank you very much, everyone. It really makes us happy that you're here on a Saturday with us today talking about energy efficiency and climate change. It's really encouraging to what we want to do. So the World Green Building Council, it's an NGO, has members in almost 70 countries. So there we have NGOs in almost 70 countries. And basically, the word and my response, Benoit, we are in for radical collaboration. There's no one organization that is going to respond to what we're talking today is how to scale up investment in energy efficiency. So I'm just going to contribute what we're doing and how we are radically collaborating, and we expect from the conversation with you and my colleagues here that we can step that up a notch and do more impact, because I think we have been talking a lot about energy efficiency now for decades, and we don't have time to not act. So from the World Green Building Council, we are leading through this global network several programs, and I guess the key one that I would want to flag here is a campaign. It's not really a project, it's a campaign called Advancing Net Zero, okay? And it has several components that even has partnerships with Sustainable Energy for All, and explain a bit. And we also have collaboration with the multilateral development banks. So the Advancing Net Zero campaign, and after the IPCC report in 2018, we started having this campaign, I guess, 3 years ago, saying we need to have the asset class that has been really hard to drive energy efficiency forward is buildings, right? That's why we're here. The asset class is very complicated, it's a very fragmented value chain. There's loads of actors, decisions, and the business case is very not easy to grasp because it's hard to grasp who gets the benefits of where are the investments. We know all of this. So the Advancing Net Zero Global Project has two key components. One is a new one that we launched in Climate Week this year. It's a call to action around embodied carbon or upfront emissions. It's a topic that sometimes in this asset class has been like in the back burner because it's really hard to understand. But I'm an economist and I come from another background, and I do understand that there is a cost of not addressing whole life cycle. And the embodied talks about how to better give the demand signals to decarbonize what is going to be put in the buildings from a systems perspective that will enhance the energy efficiency performance going forward. So talking about life cycle and performance, we have the Net Zero Carbon Buildings Commitment. It builds bridges to policymakers and city leaders. We have a partnership with C40, World Resources Institute. We have right now 28 cities committed to net zero carbon buildings and the vision of decarbonizing the building stock. The city of Helsinki signed on this week, and they even said they are going to decarbonize by 2035. Valladolid signed this week too. And there's London, New York, Tokyo, there's loads of cities there, but also from the developing world committed to that vision. And that is bridging the gap of the conversation from the policymakers, giving the signal for the private sector that that is the way forward, right? And that will enable better investment decisions from that side. The other component of the commitment is the private sector, companies. We have over 46 companies, and in the website of World GBC, you will find all the case studies for each one of them, saying how they are going to decarbonize their portfolios. First and foremost, our call to action is to all new buildings have to be net zero carbon by 2030 if we're going to meet the Paris Agreement. The full building stock has to be decarbonized by 2050. And by this, I don't mean that by 2050 we're going to start acting. We have to start today. As you were saying, Christopher, what we are not designing today is not fit for purpose. We are building in today inefficiencies that is going to be there for decades. And the other part of the conversation is the retrofit of the built environment, right? And how the policy signals and the business case can better align. There's a great program backed by the European Commission called Build Upon 2. I guess it could be labeled the biggest, let's say, retrofit challenge in Europe that's happening along. It's 8 cities committed to the vision of scaling up renovation of the existing stock. There's very interesting work being done there, financed by several actors, and again, radical collaboration. There's not one actor that's going to solve it. But throughout this call to action, we have governments acting, giving a vision, cities that are more empowered to quickly enact better policy to enable the finance, the business sector not waiting up for policy and saying we're going to lead, we can design things better. What do we mean by net zero carbon buildings? It's high energy efficiency first and foremost investments, of course powered back by renewables and offsets as a last resort, but as the minimum last resort. It's all about good design and changing the mindset to whole life cycle. And going to the Latin America question to sum up, as my colleagues here had said, we have another project called the Cities Climate Action Project, linked to the Sustainable Energy for All initiative with World Resources Institute. We have a network right now of 23 cities from 10 countries that are working on how to scale up energy efficiency at scale. The GBCs in Mexico and Colombia are leaders in the space. I, let's say, was very much engaged in my previous position in what's happening, for example, in Colombia. And I can say that we are solving also the gap of not having energy efficiency codes. Bogota enacted right now in October the first ever performance-based energy code in Latin America. And that is happening because of the radical collaboration we're able to deliver. It took 4 years to enact that code. That means that we cannot wait. That has to go on. But we have to continue pushing for business to act boldly with leadership, showing that the best asset classes that are going to have the best premium are the ones that are fit for purpose, that are climate ready, that are ready for the resilience challenge, that won't need to be putting in very expensive cooling stuff because they have been designed thinking of the unforeseeable future. And I guess also having the investment community aligned behind, for example, pilots. We have an energy green mortgages, energy efficiency green, sorry, I'm just flipping the name. But it's energy efficiency green mortgages project in Europe. Over 200 banks participated, the EMAP initiative. There is a pilot there. It's about standards, scaling up. There is a way forward. We just have to find a way to keep on supporting each other and driving this to another level.
Thank you so much. As we just saw, energy efficiency needs some specific capacity. you have to have those technical capacities, this knowledge, this data, this certification of the material. You have to have the know-how of the building designer or city planners, all that. And glad that your organization is taking the lead, developing the vision, developing the lead in some. I just hope that you are also receiving the means, because it takes time, and sometimes this is not always understood, that energy efficiency is so complex that we need to have this technical assistance first. And with this organization, international, we can easily avoid reinventing wheel.
Exactly.
Scale up, and there is a lot that we can do.
And if I just a precision, the 48 businesses I mentioned that are backing the net zero carbon buildings commitment, for example, signing to EP 100 from the climate group, which is energy productivity 100. And so we're not duplicating. When they sign to the World GBC commitment, they get the pathways, and EP 100 delivers. If cities sign on, C40, ICLEI, and other city networks, we collaborate to help those cities design their climate action roadmaps. So we are able, and if you have programs that are similar, we want to work with you, because there are ways where we can empower each other to make it even more meaningful.
Absolutely. Last on the panel is Glenn Pierce-Ross from the United Nations Sustainable Energy for All Initiative. This unit is supporting the SDG 7. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the SDG 7, Sustainable Development Goal 7 on sustainable energy. There is universal access to energy, renewable energy, doubling investment in renewable energy, and there is energy efficiency. So you are also one of the players, and energy efficiency can also support achievement of the renewable target and also achievement of the energy access target. Glenn, your take on this need to scale up investment in energy efficiency.
Thank you very much, Benoit, and thank you very much for starting us off with so much energy on your side. It was really inspirational. Sustainable Energy for All began as a UN initiative, as many of you know. Since 2016, we're an independent international organization, so outside of the UN, but certainly focused on SDG 7. And we see the perfect overlap between Sustainable Development Agenda and the Paris Agreement through the cooling challenge. And the cooling challenge, which was mentioned earlier, the cooling challenge is essentially looking at what can the Kigali Amendment countries, the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, do in order to make cooling more accessible and less, while causing less of an impact on the environment. So this is extremely, extremely important. Well, I liked very much your first slides, Benoit. I think a very important addendum to that is that the energy efficiency solutions and cooling solutions is not for the top 1%. These solutions need to be for everybody. These solutions need to be especially targeted for the most vulnerable populations. And this is one important way that we've started to shape that particular challenge. Through the Chilling Prospects report, we're now identifying which populations are most at risk of not having access to cooling. And we find, for example, that Mozambique has 85% of its population that is at risk for not having access to cooling. What would your country do if 85% of your population did not have access to cooling? So these are the challenges that we think we need to focus on. We've been doing that by recommending and working with countries on their national cooling strategies. And here's the good news. The good news is that India now has an India Cooling Action Plan, ICAP. China has a China Green Efficient Cooling Action Plan. Rwanda has its national cooling strategy. So things are starting to move in terms of the public sector's focus of shaping what it wants and what are some of the standards that it will be providing for other private sector enterprises to come in and fill some of those needs. So imagine this, China in its action plan has already identified targets for 2023. which is just around the corner. And if China can increase to 20% the amount of public buildings that are now much more energy efficient, that will be a huge impact. No question that there's a lot more to do, but that's an important step forward. How can we help other countries emulate, replicate that type of bold policy vision that's being implemented by China? Third and last point, because I think it's extremely important, is the air conditioning problem, the cooling solutions problem, which, as we know, is going to explode in countries like Indonesia, like India, like China, like Brazil. Again, these are countries that are still developing. And so there's a global cooling prize which was launched last year. Last month, we had the pleasure of identifying, out of over 200 applicants, 8 finalist technological solutions that will decrease by 5 times the amount of damage to the environment, while increasing by not more than twice the cost of the cooling solution to make it affordable. And so this is a huge challenge. There are 8 finalists that represent Japan, China, United States, India certainly, and UK. These 8 finalists will be busy putting together their prototypes through next April, and will hopefully have something to take to the market by next year. And that is, for me, a very good combination, going back to your first points, of what policy can do, what private sector can do, what technology can do, and now behavior change. Let's get the consumers to prefer these cheaper, less polluting air conditioning units. Final point, Benoit. This is about cooling for all. This is about energy efficiency for all. And that's what Sustainable Energy for All brings to the discussion.
Thank you. Very clear point. Very clear point. And yes, I speak with energy, because I strongly believe that energy efficiency is about the knowledge economy, the economy of knowledge. It's not about material. It's about knowledge. And if I want to share knowledge, I grab the attention. And the best way to grab the attention is to speak up, stand up, and shut up at the right moment. And I believe that this world is losing the war against climate change, not because of renewable energy, because of lack of understanding of energy efficiency, lack of recognition by our community that energy efficiency is complex. To deliver energy efficiency, we need a whole suite of what we said: policy, capacity building, the human dimension, the material, in order to make sure that the finance institution will come. We have less than 15 minutes before the end of this session. Why don't we take 3 questions in the room, if you agree, to see how you perceive in the audience this panel, and do you have any question to us? Let's take 3 questions. Any volunteer? Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Hello, hi. Thank you. Thanks so much, Benoit, and the rest of the panel. It was really great. It's Margaret Ansplon from the Climate Markets and Investment Association. I totally agree with the lack of investment into renewable energy solutions. Can any of you tell me what, from an investment perspective, large scale would look like for investors to come in and to crowd in? Thanks.
Okay, another one. And then here.
Really, what? It doesn't matter.
There's one question here, but so.
Yeah, I have a question about your comment on the cooling challenge related to the Kigali Amendment, which we know sets a timetable for phase down of the HFCs going to new refrigerants. And I'm Jim Wolf from the Business Council Sustainable Energy. My background's air conditioning, manufacturing type business. And so we have a real challenge to find substitutes. Some of those substitutes are flammable, going to be more costly to use. Some of them aren't as energy efficient. So I'm very interested to hear more on how you see the Kigali Amendment actually contributing to the reduction of global warming.
And the last one.
Hi everyone. My question is for Christina mainly, but if you want to reply, it will be nice as well to hear you. One thing that worries me a lot is and you mentioned it, is the vast majority of old buildings, and you mentioned that we have, for instance, in Madrid, and I don't see any, in my case, my house is I think from the 70s, and if you touch the wall, it's completely cold these days. So I don't think it will be any solution for families like my own or the people that is living in my neighborhood, to fix my house. And do you think that is real, that the governments or anyone can help us with everything that we have to do to save energy, to make my house and other houses more efficient? Because I hear that lot. I really love to hear you and all the things that you are investigating, but a solution down to earth is something that I really miss. So Christina or whoever want to reply, I will really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. 3 great questions, and addressing the whole panel. I think the first is for you, Bella, and Christopher. This idea on how to do more to scale up, and do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's still, there's so much low-hanging fruit out there. I mean, I just had a conversation yesterday or the day before with some entrepreneurs who are, been working with cities in Latin America for many, many years, and they were telling me, we should be doing energy-efficient municipal street lighting everywhere. It makes sense everywhere. And they have encountered many barriers, but they think that they have a solution, sort of a financial solution, to actually help these cities deploy this efficient street lighting much more quickly. And I think the more that we can actually surface those ideas and get them implemented with the support of the development banks, of financial institution stakeholders, and get those up and running and scaled as quickly as possible, I think that's the direction we need to head.
Christopher, you want to complement?
The problem with energy efficiency investments is that they are very small and dispersed. So it's critical to have some organization, an intermediate, it could be a bank or an agency, that acts to aggregate those investments together to a size where they become interesting for investors. And that's when we have been involved also in Latin America with energy efficiency investments, but always we have to do it with an intermediary who can do that task. And so the challenge we have is to find those intermediaries and to work together with those intermediaries to develop their skills so that they can actually participate in that process, and so that we can fund it, because also we need a certain size of investment for us to do that. For the question about the Madrid apartment, I mean, the technical knowledge is there. I mean, you will stick on the outside of your building 10 to 15 centimeters of insulation, and it can be done, and it's rather straightforward. The issue is one of organization, incentives, and for that to happen, which is complicated. If you're an apartment owned by many people, or an apartment building has to agree to do that, then it has a cost for everybody. So we have problems of organization, incentive, but the technical knowledge, as Benoit said, we have it, and you can significantly improve the efficiency of your apartment if there's a way to organize it.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Glenn. I think the question on cooling.
And I thank the question, because I think there's a really interesting parallel here to some of the other challenges that we're facing. The Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol was agreed by 65 or so countries in 2016, so it was not too long ago. It came into effect on January 1st, 2019, which was just earlier this year. And part of, I think, the secret for moving so quickly with some of the things that I was discussing, and certainly with our participation in terms of cooling for all, which is only a couple of years old, has a lot to do with recognizing that this will not move without fast, quick financial contributions, decisions, and let's not wait for the signatory governments to decide. And so what stepped into the vacuum was a consortium of 10 different foundations that pooled together a fund of about $50 million to very quickly start asking different organizations such as the Rocky Mountain Institute, can you start to put this global prize together? Sustainable Energy for All, can you start to figure out who are the most vulnerable, who are at risk? To UNDP, with the World Bank, to others. Without that seed capital that came from foundations, not from countries, not from governments, we were able to move very quickly between 2016 and 2019. So that's part, I think, of the response, and part of, I think, an example for other challenges that we have to face with climate change.
Thank you. And Christina, the question from the house in Madrid.
Yes, well, I reached for my phone because I had read about it. And we have in Spain, the GBC España is very active working on this. And I was here last week also in a panel by El País talking about a little bit, I think you were there. Yeah, okay, so here I have the follow-up. Curiously, your topic is very strong right now in the agenda in Spain. There is this action plan called Plan Nacional Integrado Energía y Clima, right? The National Energy and Climate Action Plan that goes to the EU developments of the winter packages. And the goal is in Spain to rehab, to retrofit 1.2 million houses between 2021 and 2030, starting by 30,000 by 2021. So hopefully it will get started. It is, let's say that slow start is reasonable and sometimes ambitious, because as you say, the key thing here is that right now there is not the impact framework in place and there's not information systems to understand how to benchmark your house, what would be the government support to change your house to another energy efficiency grading, and to solve the business case to get you to a green mortgage, probably to help you finance your retrofit, and that you pay it back with the savings from what you benefit from the lower bills, right? So probably that will be how it is structured. And maybe there will be some subsidies from banks saying, and I've heard this in other countries, it would probably be one sum per year per house to scale up those programs to get to the scale of the projects that is needed to get to those 1.5 million. So I hope you are in those 30,000.
Thank you, Christina. Unfortunately, time is to wrap up now, so I will just share some few words of conclusion, but I will ask each of you for one sentence. But before that, let me tell you that I hope you agree that energy efficiency deserves special attention. Special because it is complex, but so much necessary. We will not deliver this transition, the Paris Agreement, without serious scale-up of energy efficiency. So we could see this morning that what makes energy efficiency so complex. There is the human dimension, the material, the technique, the know-how, and above all, the finance also. And I'm very pleased that at least at the level of my organization, the organization I represent, there is this task group on dedicated to bridge, facilitate the conversation between the energy efficiency community and the finance institution, because we need to scale up. Every country faces the same challenge. What you can see here is work in progress. And by exchanging information is a first step. We can just gain time, and every country can just learn from the mistake from other countries. And we have produced this activity report for the last 5 years, so please take this with you. There is certainly more to be distributed. So this is from our part. We are, as you can see, there's no easy solution. The most important is to continue the dialogue all together. And I really hope that you enjoyed this session as much as I did. And now I would like each of you to have a one-sentence conclusion to make sure that we move out of this room with some common energy. Bella.
Sure. I mean, I just absolutely loved what the words Christina said, radical collaboration, and I think that for me summarizes what is absolutely necessary going forward, and I hope that we can all collaborate on this agenda.
Thank you. Chris.
We are here to share experience and to influence the policy agenda. So let's hope that each of us in our own small way we can increase the awareness of the importance of energy efficiency and help move energy efficiency up the policy agenda.
Yes, and I guess beside the radical collaboration, have the belief and the leadership that we can change this thinking that the world is out there just for our consumption. Those days are gone. We have to regenerate the resources. And we will continue be using energy. We have to be smart about it.
Thank you. And last word from Madeleine.
Information communication technologies need to be harnessed. To Chris's point, there's so many different atomized parts to this. 5 years ago, we didn't know the power of Uber. How can we use ICT to bring all these parts together, and that way we make the solutions available for all?
With that, thank you so much for your attention, and I think we have to empty the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Benoit.